All right, guys, welcome to another episode of ARWP, the All Real Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Eric Novak, and today we have a special guest. He is one half of the Motor City Machine Guns. He is Alex Shelley. Enjoy the video. I'll see you guys at the end. He is one half of the Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley.
Hi, Eric.
How are you?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm doing great, especially now that I get to talk to you. This just became a lot, of a better day. And let's start with the first thing, and that's TNA. Tell me how Slammiversary came to be. Tell me how you got the call and you got the band back together.
Sure. So, I would say probably the past 3 years or so, Impact has reached out to me intermittently about coming back. And for whatever reason or another, whether I was under contract, whether I was in school, I wasn't able to do it. And they reached out one more time. It was May or April, during the pandemic. And at that point in time, I was kind of taking things as they came to me. When I came back to wrestling, I just wanted to do things that were exciting to me, things that I thought were creatively and athletically fulfilling. And the idea of reuniting the Motor City Machine Guns, especially with Chris Sabin coming back from his third ACL repair, to me, that was exciting. So, yeah, I bit.
Awesome. And, there was a tweet that I do want to bring up. It was about the Pure Championship, because before, TNA, before Impact, you did ROH, and I loved watching an ROH. That was interesting. That was like a good singles action for you. Tell me what the future looks like for ROH and you.
I intentionally have not signed a contract anywhere. And the reason I have not is because I want to be able to wrestle everywhere, whether that's Impact, whether that's New Japan, whether that's Ring of Honor, whether that's NXT, AEW, anywhere. And one of the things that, again, I found creatively fulfilling and athletically fulfilling was the idea of being in a resurrected Pure title tournament. So I was very, very, very stoked to implement the Pure title rules again in Ring of Honor, but obviously that didn't happen. Hopefully I'll be back down the line, though.
All right. So you're not fully signed anywhere, just because I want a lot of people go with like, oh, you're a part of Impact, even though you've made marks and you've said stuff that you'd want to go back to ROH, but you're currently not contracted with anywhere. You just have like one of those free roam contracts currently.
Yeah, no contract whatsoever. I agree to come in. I agree to do the job that I'm asked to do, and I do honorable business. And I think that's part of the reason people are apt to work with me, but at the same time, wrestling's very different than it was in the past. And there's a lot of guys out there who are freelance and don't have contracts. So I'm proud to be one of them.
All right, awesome. And one more thing I want to talk about, and then we'll get to like more of the fun part, is I want to talk about NXT. I want to talk about, because you are the only person, I mean, if you know someone, you're the only person that I know who came to NXT with no contract, no nothing, and they put you on TV, and they let you, face with Kushida, they let you be a tag team, they put you, in the Dusty Road Classic. Tell me how that was, especially with that being, in my opinion, your first time with WWE.
It was awesome. I had coached previously at the Performance Center in October of 2019, and I thought that the way they treated their athletes was revolutionary. NXT is just something totally, totally different. And I've never seen anything quite like it. The facility itself is state of the art, but also the fact that they have all these different tiers of training and this plethora of knowledge from all these awesome, awesome wrestlers from over the years, guys that I grew up watching. So it was real interesting for me because under the same roof, you had Robbie Brookside, you had Kendo Kashin, you had Shawn Michaels, and you had Terry Taylor. And if you're familiar with any of those names, it's a very, very unique melting pot. But of course, only WWE has access to it. Mm-hmm. These guys have so many people and resources to learn from. And on top of that, too, the strength and conditioning and the physical therapy components that they have in place, too, it's mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. Like, guys have every advantage that any athlete in any sport would have, not just pro wrestling. And I really, really thought it was just an awesome atmosphere and an awesome environment. And I was so honored to get asked to come wrestle for NXT and especially to resurrect the Time Splitters with Kushi. I mean, we didn't go very deep in the tournament, but what an awesome experience. Honestly, at the end of my first NXT match, probably before it too, I had tears in my eyes and a lump in my throat because it was just a dream come true. It really was. WWE is awesome.
Yeah, I love your tag team with Kushida. I am a big New Japan fan, and I always go on New Japan World and just rewatch your classics. And I'm curious, how is New Japan looking for the future? Because I know you said you're open to anything. Would you ever be open to going back to New Japan, or are you gonna wait for Kushida to also be ready to go back? Would you go without him, or would you go with him?
I would go without him, and I would go with him. I think for me, full disclosure, I work full time in physical therapy during the week, and I don't have the ability to just up and go somewhere for 3 weeks or a month or 2 weeks. I was under contract with New Japan for 3 years, and I know how rigorous that schedule can get. I would love to go back because a lot of the guys that were in the dojo, some of which hadn't even debuted yet, now they're the top guys. So your Evils and Hiromus and Punky 3K and even Okada to a point. These guys are just wrestling royalty in New Japan now, and I think that's awesome to see the elevation, the growth of these young men. I would love to go back and just wrestle them at different levels in different environments. That's in the future. That's in the future. But I just kind of take life one day at a time.
All right, awesome. It's really because, like I said, you've been everywhere. You've been literally everywhere in wrestling, and it's just awesome to hear that there's so many open doors for you in the future, especially when the pandemic goes away, and with what because you said you can't really travel for 3 weeks. New Japan's doing this thing where they're doing the U.S. tour now. They take a lot of people from the U.S. and they bring them to these events. They got people like Alex Zane, Blake Christian, TJP. All those many people. We could see something. Hopefully one day. Alex Shelley in the works. But let's talk about the fun part now. Let's talk about your career. Tell me about the first ever match you've ever had, if you could remember it. If you can't.
No, I can remember it. I think everybody remembers your first match pretty well. But Michigan is a pretty large state geographically. So to compare it to a country, we're about the same size as England.
Mm-hmm.
And to get from Detroit up to the northern part of the state takes about 7.5 hours. My first match was in March of 2002. And we drove from Detroit up to the UP, the Upper Peninsula. And again, about 7 hours. And we had really bad weather. I got paid maybe like $5, and I was in a 4-way tag match, and I honestly don't remember a ton about the match. I know it was in a nightclub. I know we spun out on the way home. We didn't get back till like 7 a.m. the next day, and I had the time of my life. It was just so cool to be able to do that and to actually get paid to wrestle. That's making me a professional. Everybody, I think, has fond memories of their career when they started out. I definitely remember my first match.
Awesome. All right. Well, tell me why you became a pro wrestler, because that's also another thing. You look at many people and you wonder, why do this? Why inflict so much pain? What joy do you get? So tell me why you decided to give up a lot to become a pro wrestler.
Sure. I was an athlete growing up, and I do feel that having worked in physical therapy and athletic training for a period of time, athletes are different in general. I don't know if they acquire a certain stimuli from an early age, but athletes are typically able to deal with pain a little bit better. And they have a tendency to be more of a thrill-seeking type of personality. I always enjoyed sports. And when I was maybe 10 or 11 or so, I was just fascinated by video games and comic books and movies and these fantasy type settings. And wrestling was larger than life too, and it kind of fit into the same bucket as those aforementioned topics. So I got hooked on it. But really, truly, what inspired me to become a pro wrestler was seeing the guys who were more athletic, not the super heavyweights per se, although I did like the super heavyweights too, but seeing the guys who could really move, and the guys who were doing things on TV that I didn't think pro wrestlers did. That was really what captivated me, and that was my driving force up until I became a wrestler myself.
All right, wow. And tell me the largest crowd you ever worked and the smallest crowd you ever worked.
Sure. Largest is probably one of the Tokyo Domes. I couldn't tell you which one, simply based on capacity. So even if that building was only 30% full, it would still outnumber any of the other venues I would have been able to perform in front of. Although Arena Mexico is pretty sized. And smallest crowd. I mean, everybody who's come up the way I did through the independents, everybody's worked in front of single-digit crowds. I guarantee it. So 100% for sure.
All right, awesome. So tell me, now that you are, Impact one half of the Impact Tag Team Champions, tell me, how does that feel to come back to an old home, especially that it's been, long overdue to have a comeback and just take the titles, showing that there hasn't really been a change, that even if, many years you left, you came back and you're still at that energy that you were, before.
Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of guys hit certain points in their career where they just take it to another level and they shift gears. And I kind of feel that since I came back to wrestling last year, I shifted up or shifted down, whichever one goes faster, I guess. And I'm really, really, really happy and excited to be a part of pro wrestling. Whereas I hate to say it this way, but there's been years past where it kind of felt like a job and that I was trapped. I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like I can walk away from wrestling at any point in time, not be relying on it. And because of that, my participation in it isn't a necessity, it's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, because internally I think we have to honor our core values, that shows that I really love wrestling. And all the energy I put into it is definitely something that I opt to do rather than I have to do, if that makes sense to you.
Mm.
So, that being stated, I have this newfound passion, and Seidel, coming off of a third torn ACL, has a lot to prove too. He still wants to wrestle for many more years, but that's a really serious injury. Athletes end their careers after one ACL repair, let alone 3. And I think he wants to make sure that everybody remembers him, not as somebody who's got bad knees, but as an incredible pro wrestler with a really cool story to tell, which he most certainly is. So I think those two motivations, respectively for each of us, combined with the fact that we're willing to put the work in. Like, we've always been hard workers. And even before Slammiversary, we were training in the ring a couple times a week for a couple months to make sure that we were on point. Our work ethic shines. We've got the guts. And I think we've got more experience than anybody else in our generation. And it's a very unique experience in its own right, too, because you're looking at 2 guys who have been in New Japan, who have been in Mexico, who have been on TV since they were 21 years old, who have done all these different things and wrestled all these different guys and been in all these different situations. And I really feel like at this point in our careers, we have more tools in our toolbox than we've ever had before. And because of that, we're able to present something a bit different. We're able to handle situations a little more efficiently than we would have in the past. And I think you're seeing it play out on Impact now.
Awesome. I get like a maturity kind of thing. That's what you're saying, like from back then. All right, awesome. So tell me, what would be on your bucket list now that you're in Impact? What are some things that you want to check off? Obviously, getting the titles, that was the first thing done. You guys faced the Rascals, or tried, like there was out of it was not 100% of full match. But tell me, what are some things that you definitely want to do while you're in Impact?
Sure. I will say that when I went back to Impact, I was pleasantly surprised, and I use that term loosely, but pleasantly surprised by the depth of the talent they had. What I mean by that is, as I watched the shows after my own matches, I realized, oh my gosh, everybody on this roster is good to great to awesome to amazing. And there's so many guys there that I would love to share a ring with. The obvious ones we've kind of already done that with. North, right? The North are incredible. Rascals, incredible. But I would very much like to wrestle the Good Brothers. And looking at the X Division too, I see so much talent there. I think Chris Bay's really good. TJP's been good for years. Trey Miguel's really, really good. I've never wrestled Rich Swann. I've never wrestled Sami Callihan, heavyweight division, of course. Eddie Edwards, I have wrestled, but not many years, and I'm sure he's matured much the same way I have. So there's just so many guys that I would love to lock horns with. Yeah, I've got a lot to do there.
So you're open to the X Division opportunity there. You're open to singles competition and Impact.
Oh, very much so. And, I've talked to Saban about this too. Like, we're primarily known as tag team wrestlers, but I think people oftentimes forget, like, we're pretty good singles wrestlers. And we discussed how Motor City Machine Guns probably won't ever be a team that's going to, I don't know, super kick anybody and throw them through a barber shop glass window. We'll probably just go our separate ways and tear shit up on our own as far as being singles wrestlers, and then reunite when we need to. I would love to wrestle Saban in a singles match. I mean, honestly, that's a dream match for me. And I think a lot of people would like to see that too.
Including me. Awesome. All right. So one thing I like to talk about, and it's just something that, especially with you, your take on it's very interesting. Talk to me about your gear. I'm a big gear guy. I think, a wrestler looks as good as his gear. If you look like you're meant to be at the show, that means, people should look at you like, oh, you're a top star. Your gear is one of a kind. And I think you brought it up a little bit like you being an athlete. So you taking like ideas from like different kind of sports. But tell me about your original gear. So like the crazy colors, some more to coming into your more standout like pirate type of gear. And I only say pirate because of the symbol that you have. Like it's more of like a pirate type of thing. But tell me more about the design, the gear, because I know you do multicolors. You recently pulled out the black and white one, which is really nice. Tell me more about that.
Sure. So I'll go back a minute. In 2006, myself, Austin Aries, and Roderick Strong wrestled Chris Daniels, Chris Sabin, and AJ Styles on Impact. And I remember Don Callis actually watched a match and he said, that match was incredible. And he's saying this to Scott D'Amore, who was one of my trainers. But everybody looked the same. And I took that to heart because to me, I always envision myself looking similar to the characters that I grew up watching. And I grew up watching, at least when I started watching wrestling, mid-90s WWF. Mm-hmm. Really look at those guys. Everybody looks so different and so unique. Razor Ramon, Diesel, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Aldo Montoya, 1, 2, 3 Kid, IRS. You can go up and down the list. Louis Spicoli or Red Redford, whatever you want to call him. Hakushi. Like everybody looked very, very, very unique. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to have like kind of my own unique look that would kind of put me in there with them. Like, okay, cool. I can wrestle 1, 2, 3 Kid and I'll look the way I do and he looks the way he does. I can wrestle bodied on a skip and I would look very different than he does. And I guess it comes down to looking different. So I had that mentality in the back of my mind always. And then that comment came up in 2006. And that was when I started playing around with things. And I probably didn't find my niche until, I don't know, 2007 or 2008, where I was like, okay, I really like this gear and I'm going to run with this the whole time. But a lot of my early ideas were based off of two things. I used to go to a lot of punk rock shows and concerts when I was a kid, and I was in bands growing up. So there was a little bit of draw from there, too. On top of that, one of the things I always thought was cool was motocross. And a lot of motocross gear, to me, was super colorful, and I was intrigued by it. I don't know why I was intrigued by it. I just was. But the designs, the patterns, and the colors were always matching but chaotic at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I started to draw off those two elements and started to kind of piece things together as it went from there too. And I was never going to be a guy who could wear trunks. Like I never wanted to wear trunks. I always wanted to wear long tights because most of the guys I grew up watching wore long tights too. So that I kind of ruled that out too. When I went to Japan, I drew influences from a lot of the guys I wrestled over there too. Japan, at least in my opinion, for a long time, and still probably pretty much today too, at least in some areas, is about 10 years ahead of us in terms of pro wrestling. Mm. Or at least certain elements of it are. And certainly here was part of it. So I was able to take all these experience and these mentalities and this imagery, and I'm a pretty artistic person. When I was 16 years old, I actually went to the Chicago Institute of Art and got college credit for a summer program that I applied to, and they would take high schoolers and let them live in the dorms for 3-4 months, and you would basically just go in and do whatever you're going to do every day. By being able to piece all this stuff together, I kind of had like a weird, unique take on gear. And honestly, a lot of people hated it. They hated it. They didn't get it, right? Like, so I was in TNA at the time, so I just looked weird to them. Which, to be fair, it is weird looking. Nowadays,
they didn't like the orange and the gray. They didn't like that one. The gear where it's like you had like one side is orange, one side is gray.
I didn't like any of it. It just started to look bizarre, you know. And I think kind of the look at that point in time was trunks, baby oil, short hair, tattoos, and that was like what was commonly accepted as a good look. My look was definitely not bad. And to be fair, I'm a smaller guy in the first place. I'm not a real badger. So yeah, it was just kind of considered, oh man, that's a quirky look, that's a weird look, that's an abstract look. But obviously, younger wrestlers. And a lot of my peers really thought that was cool. So that's kind of how the look came to be. And the way it is now, I've had the same logo on my gear, which is a Teenage Bottle Rocket logo on my ass for like 10 years. But they're one of my absolute favorite bands. And I just thought it was a neat logo, to be honest with you. So I put that on there. And that eventually they contacted me and said, oh, that's so awesome. Thank you for having that on there. I thought that was neat. But the gear I have now is inspired from one of my favorite animes growing up, and it's called Fist of the North Star. So I kind of just took the imagery from that and how the main character Kenshiro looked and applied it to a wrestling look. And it's fairly accurate, I suppose. But I would tell people in Japan that that's what it was. It clicked with them right away. Oh wow, yeah, it does look like that.
It just clicked to me too. I'm a huge anime guy, and as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, Fist of the North Star, Hokuto no Ken. So it's not like super blatant if you don't know what it is, but if you do know what it is, like, oh yeah, it does look like that. Yeah, so that's about it, man.
That's awesome, but you know, it just shocks you because I'm someone who literally looks at the gear and then like, okay, let me see him wrestle, and it's not the best quality, but it is just what drives me to watch. And your gear was just amazing. I can't believe people did not like it or didn't approve of it. It was just one of a kind. It shocks me. Wow.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of how it was back then, man. If you were different or if people didn't get you, they didn't try to get you. And to be fair, like, with all due respect to whoever was in charge back then, I won't name names, but like, everybody has their own personal bias.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you restart that?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
With all due respect to everybody that was in charge in 2006, 2007, so on and so forth, everybody's going to gravitate towards a certain look. Everybody likes something else, and that's fine. However, I think one of the keys to having a successful pro wrestling company is to have all of these different looks and flavors and styles of wrestling. You don't want just one uniform thing. Granted, specialization is important, but you know, you do want to have a little bit of variety, especially aesthetically, I think. Because as you mentioned, looks are the first thing that people see. And we judge people based on looks, whether we want to or not. We can't help it, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, something else I want to talk about, and you brought it up, was TJP. How you said he's a long wrestler. You know, you and him kind of came through a lot of the same homes at times. And you have a big match with him at Warrior Wrestling tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, tomorrow.
And he was on Twitch, and we talked about it. We talked about the match, and he goes, you guys haven't wrestled in 15 years, but you guys have wrestled once. Tell me what that match, or what are you looking forward to coming up at that match tomorrow?
Oh, my gosh, man. We were so young. It was at PWG, I know that much, and it was at the first building they ever ran. Or one of them, not the very first. Anyway, I remember the first time I ever saw him, and he was wrestling as Pinoy Boy, and I believe it was in PWG, but he's a phenom. If you know a lot about his career, you know what he's done. But I remember getting tapes of Los Habanas in CMLL, and it was him and Rocky and Bobby Quantz, and these guys are wrestling in Arena, Mexico against like Virus and Ricky Marvin, and it's just like mind-blowing how good he was at such a young age. And he's literally, I don't think he's ever had a job. Outside of pro wrestling, I don't think he's ever done anything else. Like, the guy is just pound for pound, skill-wise, probably the best. You talk about how something is supposed to look sometimes when you're coaching people. It's supposed to look like this. And I've had to go so far as, for example, if I'm showing somebody how to do a squat, I'll pull up a video. And this is how the squat is supposed to look. Here, look at these angles and look at this body position. Okay, and here's how we start. And we'll slowly integrate all these different things. Every move that TJ does is supposed to look that way. Mechanically, I don't think there's anybody else out there who's better than he is. So it'll be really interesting to see how we both grow. And I'm really looking forward to it. Warrior Wrestling's an awesome company. I can't say enough good things about them. And every time I've gone there, it's only been twice, but they've given me Red Narita and Austin Aries. Red Narita is going to be a star in New Japan. Austin Aries obviously is a star. They just have so many pieces of talent that they bring in. It's a real honor to go and share a ring with TJP. And then the next week after that, I've got John Gresham too. Two of the best technicians in the world, maybe ever, really, honestly.
Yeah, but you've already had matches with Jonathan Gresham in ROH. I've seen him. This is cool to have you guys come back, have you set the chemistry level again, and it's also a little bit of a sneak peek of what's to come when ROH will be opening the doors, because that's what's going to be greeting you outside the door. But let's talk more about, I love how there's so many guys that you wrestled and that you've shared a locker room with that created their own company. And I wanted your take on it because you wrestled Generation Me. You wrestled Kenny Omega in a one-on-one match in New Japan. Tell me how you feel about All Elite Wrestling, what they did, because you've been in this business for so long. Did you ever think that was possible that independent wrestlers could create a business?
Oh, certainly. I grew up watching WWF mostly, but ECW was basically an independent that just grew. And especially the further along I got in the business, you would see people go up and come down and go up and come down, and it happens all the time. Was I surprised that a major backer gave somebody money to start a wrestling company that they saw potential in? Not really. That happens. And I think it's awesome. Good for them, I'm glad they're all making great money, and I'm hopeful that they're happy.
Would you ever want to go to All Elite Wrestling? Was that something on your bucket list?
No, I mean, it's not. I don't have a bucket list. I really, truly, I just try and enjoy everything for what it is. Would I go there? Sure, yeah, I would. But it's nothing I have to do to be content with my career or to enjoy life, if that makes sense. Good for them. I'm happy that people are able to work somewhere else, and I'm sure the product they put out is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. So one thing I like to talk about, and this is a shock if people don't know who you are that are listening to this now, which I doubt, unless they just became new wrestling fans and haven't seen your work. So tell people a few matches, and I know it's hard to name just a few, but there's got to be a few that mean a lot to you sentimentally, just memories. Tell me a few matches that you can just name out from any company, New Japan, Impact, ROH, just something like one of each, just for people to definitely check it out, check you out.
Okay, let's see. So, man, I guess the first one that comes to mind with New Japan is probably the Super Juniors final where I wrestled Devitt. That was in 2013, and I actually wrestled that match with a cracked skull. I didn't know it until I got diagnosed way after the fact, but I cracked my skull earlier in the night against Taka Michinoku, and I wrestled against Devitt, and I'm pretty proud of the match in the first place, but even more proud when I realized how serious that injury is in a weird, morbid way. It's actually highly dangerous, but we had no way of knowing at that point in time. So that match in New Japan was very special to me. Also, in 2014, Kushida and I wrestled the Young Bucks at Osaka Joe Hall. And it was probably my favorite tag match that I've ever had. I think that covers a lot of ground, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Right. So as far as Impact goes, Chris Sabin and I had a singles match in 2009 that was really, really special to me. These are kind of obscure too, but in 2011, Sabin had suffered his first ACL tear, and he was out. And they used me sporadically over the course of the summer months, but every other week I was wrestling Okada or Doug Williams. And I don't know how easy those matches are to find, but man, those are two of my absolute favorite opponents. The Young Bucks debut in 2010 was one of my favorite matches there, honestly. A lot of people talk about the beer money stuff, but I really, really like that match with the Bucks. And wrestling beer money was awesome too, don't get me wrong. As far as Ring of Honor goes, had a lot of matches there. Honestly, I wrestled Gresham twice there, and they were absolutely life-changing for me. Mm-hmm. Just to have somebody who kind of came up the same way I did. He did. He did come up the same way I did. He had the same senpai in Japan and everything. And our chemistry, I felt, was very, very good. Also, more recently, too, I wrestled Mark Haskins, and I would love to wrestle him again. Oh, let's see. What other companies did you name? Those three, right?
I mean, you've been in a lot more, but I mean, if you don't want to...
That's fine, yeah. Oh, I should say this. There's a guy in Japan, and I'm not especially proud of my end of these matches, but there's a guy in Japan who was my first mentor over there, and his name's Akito Hidaka, and it was when I was in 01. Mm-hmm. He's mind-blowing, and there's a lot of footage out there of me wrestling him. But really, if anybody were to just hunt down his work, I feel like it's very, very good. And he really did shape me for the future, so I drew so much off of him. My career wouldn't be the same without Hidaka.
That's awesome. And another part of the question is, who are a few guys you want to face in the future? Because, you're still young, you just got back into the, wrestling, now the pandemic is over, it seems like you're back, it seems like, the gears are moving, you're wrestling on the weekends now for wrestling and stuff like that. Who are a few guys you want to face in the future? And they can be from any company at all.
Sure. Honestly, I've got a lot of matches coming up against guys that I want to face. So, I'm wrestling TJ tomorrow and then Gresham next week. But also in October, I'm going to be wrestling Ben Carter, I believe, coming up. Anthony Henry, who's very, very good. He's retiring at the end of the year, and I'm really, really excited about that. He's the same age as myself. What else do I have? Tony Deppen for Game Changer Wrestling. I'm really excited about that. I would like to wrestle Daniel McAbey. He's a technical wrestler out of the Pacific Northwest. I think he's phenomenal. Let's see, who else? There's a lot of independent guys that I've helped out a little bit here and there, but I would very much like to wrestle Danhausen in a singles match. He's a Detroit guy, and I've trained with him a bit. Warhorse, I would like to wrestle. I would like to wrestle Eric Stevens again. Tom Lawler, I would like to wrestle. And a lot of these guys are more Midwest independent dominant, but that's a scene that I'm in, and I'm proud to be a part of that scene. Because here in the Midwest, for Black Label Pro and AIW and Warrior and Game Changer and all these different places, man, if you can't hang, if you can't wrestle, you get run over, and you're out. Mm-hmm. That's it. So it's either keep up or just go away. Because somebody else is going to take your spot. And I think that's what keeps me sharp. That's one of the reasons I've been able to perform at a high level in Ring of Honor and in that. Because iron sharpens iron, and I'm on the indies with these guys who are hungry and they're good, and that only makes me better.
Awesome. All right, that's really interesting. Another thing I really want to talk about is the really big iconic Motor City Machine Guns. You have that whole promo, you had that entire thing in the rain. That was a whole big thing, and I've heard so many stories about it. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. So let's see, that would have been October 2008, maybe September, actually September. And what had happened was they had just signed Mick Foley to a deal. So TNA was on Spike TV at the time, and they were constantly trying to just catch eyes, just trying to grab new viewers. And we had a good time slot. I think they were on Thursdays, but I don't know. I really didn't watch myself on TV ever. And one of the things they would do is they would have these really cool photo shoots every so often, and that was one of them. So they had these shots in the rain, and they did it with, they did it with at least probably 24 people, I think. But yeah, we had to come in on an off day. It was at Universal Studios, and it was just slow motion shots in the rain. It's I'm shocked that the footage still exists. Somebody else just told me about that, and I was like, oh, I forgot I had ever done that, to be honest with you. So Saban and I literally said, what's the shittiest gear we have? Let's just wear that, And that's what we did, man. But yeah, that was why they did it. It was because, more eyes were hopefully going to be on the products. We had just got Mick Foley. And they had Sting and Kurt Angle, like everybody that's kind of associated with TNA as far as being a legend was under contract at that point.
Yeah, I only bring it up because I know you don't watch yourself, so I know you don't like to see it. But there was promos for Impact. When you guys returned, they showed it again. They showed all the memories and a lot of that. So that was also like one thing that I heard talked about. I just wanted to hear your side on it.
No, I mean that is ancient, man. That's over 10 years old at this point. And it's funny to me that they would use that. To be honest with you, because I'm 37 now. I was like, might have been 25 at that point. So it's like to use 12-year-old video footage for your current tag team champions. I guess that speaks volumes as to like how well me and Saban have aged. That's still, it's still them, 12 years ago. I hope they use footage now, 12 years now from now, and I'm 49.
No, but you have, an amazing career, and there's still so much to do. And, it's just amazing to hear what you have to say about the business. But now I just want to hear more about yourself. What are things that you enjoy doing on your own that's not wrestling related? Like during the pandemic, what have you been up to during the pandemic?
So I mentioned before that I worked in physical therapy, and honestly, I never stopped. Like my life did not change much. I didn't wrestle for a few months, but I've got a weird dual identity. My patients know me as Patrick. That's it. They don't know what I do, and I don't talk about what I do because it's not about me, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm there to help them get better and feel better, not be in pain or get stronger, whatever the case may be. So I never, ever, ever tell them about myself unless I've been working with them for months on end and they ask. I just didn't wrestle on weekends. That was all it was. So for me, not a major change, really, truly. Like, I feel bad for a lot of people because the suicide rate is up a lot. Mm-hmm. Divorce rate is up a lot. You can't even measure depression or anxiety, and I'm sure that's up. And especially if you've got kids and they're not going back to school and you don't know what to do with them and your kids are wigged out, man, it's just a really tough time. I'm very fortunate that my life really was fairly nuclear the whole time. Like, honestly, I can't complain one iota. Like, is the pandemic mildly inconveniencing for me? Yes, but only mildly. Mm-hmm. Whereas for some people, it's been life-changing and very, very difficult. So I lost out on a bunch of money. That part sucks. But again, I have two identities and two careers, two incomes. So I was really, really lucky there. And I feel bad for a lot of my friends who are independent wrestlers because a lot of these guys, it's almost a badge of honor to say, I'm not going to have a job anymore from 9 to 5. I'm only going to wrestle. But if you're doing it independently, you've got no guarantee, man. You're mm-hmm. kind of rolling the dice every time you do it. And there were no dice to be rolled anymore because there were no more shows. To me, that's just heart-rendering. So I feel bad that so many people took a major hit like that. Just in wrestling, let alone everybody else that you would actually feel bad for too. Line workers or bartenders or people who invested in small businesses. All of them, man, they got shut down hard. And I'm really very, very fortunate.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm happy you're now financially stable in a way where, everything is moving again. All the gears are moving and everything is good. So, one thing I want to talk about, and it's so ironic because it's like you always talk about like this was so many years ago, this and that. I love to watch, classics. I love it because it's just some things that will make, like, I haven't seen live. So for me, it's like the first time I'm seeing it. One thing that happened really recently, maybe a couple weeks ago, I found out actually seeing you and Matt Seidel way, way, way back in ROH. Like maybe when you first started, like this is even before Motor City Machine Gun. This is like a little bit like maybe before. And the most iconic thing Matt Seidel was known for is one of the biggest RKOs ever made when he hit a star and Randy RKO'd him through it. So You did the same thing. I was watching that match. I don't know if you even know, but you did the same exact thing, and there hasn't been any talk about it. So I sent it to Matt, and Matt reposted it, and it became this whole thing. Tell me about that. Tell me how that, because that's terrifying to know you have to hit a cutter when he's doing a shooting star. That's like like I would have, shivers. But this isn't. Again, you're a wrestler, so for you, it's like you take risks all the time. So tell me how you felt about that.
Sure. So I have found that using an ace crusher or diamond cutter or whatever you want to call it against flying opponents works very well, because if you can catch it out of nowhere, it comes as a total shock. Mm-hmm. It's a great, and it puts them down, and it's using their momentum and just arthrokinematically, it's awesome, right? And I've used that technique in my career to catch people out of midair a couple times before, and I really enjoyed it. Seidel does a shooting star, and he does a beautiful shooting star. Everybody knows that. That was at the Battle of Los Angeles in 2007. We had been doing Motor City Machine Guns for about a year, but I don't think TNA even wanted to use us as a team at that point. I could be wrong. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. So that was me in a pretty high-level tournament. I wrestled Tyler Black in the first round, and I beat him. And I beat Seidel in the second round, and then I lost to Roderick in the next round. I think Roderick may have even won the whole tournament. However, that was Matt's last match before he went to the WWE. Mm-hmm. So he reported to OVW shortly thereafter. I don't know, just homework, like studying your opponent, like classic good wrestler work ethic, I suppose. That's what you chalk that up to.
That's awesome, because I love how everyone's talking about like Randy Orton's biggest RKO when like people just didn't remember that, and I feel like that was the start of it. That was the most iconic thing, not really Randy Orton's thing, but that's the first time I've ever seen it, especially that time. I'm pretty sure other people have done it before, but I don't think it was on like live TV or on camera, and it looked so good. Like when I saw it, I had to repost it. I was watching it, and then I immediately saw it. I was like, wait, I gotta rewind this and record this, because I don't think anyone was talking about this. Maybe back then, but like I had to bring this back. I had to talk about it, and it's insane too, because you did it so fast, so fresh. It didn't even look like any misses or anything. You knew the exact time to hit it, everything, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's actually the only match that Matt and I have had too. But wrestling is what it is. Everybody borrows from other people or steals or rips off or whatever the case may be. I may be one of the guys that's been borrowed from the most, which I'm okay with. I mean, Randy Orton's a millionaire, and like I'm in the basement of a condo right now talking to you after I went to work earlier today. So everybody chooses their own path to a point, and then luck plays a role too. I thought it was cool at the time. I won the match, so I mean, that's for more in the moment, I suppose.
That's true. All right, well, we are running down to the end. Where can people find you? Actually, no, before that, tell me about merch. How can people support you? Where can people buy your merch? Where can people, help you in all that way?
Yeah, I'm not good at merch, and I know that sounds weird. I think what happens is, it's funny you mention this. I had a female wrestler tell me the other day, Patrick, you leave thousands of dollars on the table every month by not making more merch or not marketing yourself more. And the fact of the matter is, I don't really care about merch that much. I'm too busy, right? Like working a career and then wrestling and then having time to myself to try and unwind. It's enough. I wish I was better at it. So what I did do is I partnered with Tiger Driver, right? And you can follow them on Twitter. It might just be at Tiger Driver 91X is their handle. And they're going to start making me merch. I do have a pro wrestling tees store, but I haven't updated it in ages. Man, I wish I could promote myself better, but I'm just really not that type of guy, to be honest with you. I do this for the love of the game. I don't do it for fame or glory or anything like that. But I do have an Instagram, so what is my Instagram? What is my Instagram?
Taste the Drift.
Yeah, Taste the Dip. That's right, at Taste the Dip.
I remember.
My Twitter is at Fake Kincaid. And they're both Hot Snake songs by this band I like called the Hot Snakes. So that alone, I think, kind of speaks volumes about how well I market myself. Like I'm using these songs from a band I love rather than anything related to myself. But at this point, it's like too late to change, maybe? I don't know. Like, WWE was tagging me when I was doing NXT with, like, at Fake Kincaid. And
yeah,
sure
there's so many fake accounts. You have no, and like, you have no idea. Like, it's insane.
More like me than I do, you know? But I don't give a shit. Whatever.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Wow, what an awesome video. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Hearing everything Alex Shelley has to say about NXT, about New Japan Pro Wrestling, about what he wants to do on Impact in the future, when he's done with the tag team division, when he wants to go solo. There's so much to really, analyze in that video. Take the time to watch it again, enjoy it. But if you have not yet, Bound of Glory is tomorrow, Saturday, where he will be facing a fatal 4-way tag match where it's him, his partner Chris Sabin versus the North versus the Good Brothers versus Ace Austin and Madman Fulton. That's going to be an insane match. I hope you guys enjoy that. I hope you guys watch it. Right, tell me in the comments what you thought of it. And if you have not yet, please go follow me. All my information is in the bio below. Also, Alex Shelley's information is all in the bio below. So if you've not yet followed him, you can now follow him on Instagram, on Twitter. I know he has a lot of accounts. You may not know which one's which. You now know which ones are which. You can look at it. You can now see it. I'll see you guys in the next one. There's going to be another new video coming up. I can't wait to show you guys all the videos that I planned. There's so many awesome ones coming up, and I know you guys are enjoying it. Thank you so much for all your comments or your support. I appreciate it, and I can't wait to give you guys more awesome content.